So a question comes in mind that Joint Comprehensive Program of Action, which is also called as US-Iran Nuclear Deal, or also called as P5+1 Agreement, why this particular deal was signed? What philosophy did Barack Obama had before signing the US-Iran nuclear deal? Amongst all the reasons because of which the US-Iran nuclear deal was signed, three were the most prominent reasons. The first was Afghanistan's stability. Barack Obama announced a drawdown plan in 2012. And when he announced the drawdown plan of US military from Afghanistan, three things were very clear. Firstly, Pakistan would continue to play a spoilsport despite all pressures. So an alternate route has to be found to Afghanistan, and that alternate route can only be provided via Iran. And thirdly, among the other countries in the region, Iran, with its political and cultural linkages, as well as a long common border, was one of the most influential stakeholders in not only providing an alternate access to Afghanistan, but also positively affecting Afghanistan's transition. And Iran is one of the very genuinely interested regions which wants Afghan stability. That is the reason Obama signed a P5+1 nuclear deal with Iran. And Iran is also a country which wants Iraq stability. After the US withdrawal in 2011, Iraq was considered well and truly under the Iranian umbrella. Iraq was considered to be truly under Iranian umbrella, and it was Iran only which saved Iraq from the onslaught of the ISIS forces. Iran which saved Iraq from the onslaught of the ISIS forces. And Iran also used its Basij forces, B-A-S-I-J, Basij forces, to fight with strength and capability with the ISIS. And Iran stability is very important if we want Central Asian stability. Without Iran, the Central Asian stability cannot occur, because Afghanistan is already a destabilized state, and Pakistan is also having a lurking economy. And if Iran also collapses, then Iraq is already completely toxically disintegrated. So a strategic arc of instability will come into existence, starting Libya, and then Syria, and then Iraq, and then Afghanistan, all the way till Xinjiang. The strategic arc of instability may destabilize many nations here. And that's the reason US-Iran nuclear deal was signed despite the contrary pressure from the Israeli lobbyists.
For the first time in nearly a decade, we have halted the progress of the Iranian nuclear program, and key parts of the program will be rolled back. Iran has committed to halting certain levels of enrichment and neutralizing part of its stockpiles. Iran cannot use its next-generation centrifuges, which are used for enriching uranium. Iran cannot install or start up new centrifuges, and its production of centrifuges will be limited. Iran will halt work at its plutonium reactor, and new inspections will provide extensive access to Iran's nuclear facilities and allow the international community to verify whether Iran is keeping its commitments. These are substantial limitations which will help prevent Iran from building a nuclear weapon. Simply put, they cut off Iran's most likely paths to a bomb. Meanwhile, this first step will create time and space over the next 6 months for more negotiations to fully address our comprehensive concerns about the Iranian program. And because of this agreement, Iran cannot use negotiations as cover to advance its program. On our side, the United States and our friends and allies have agreed to provide Iran with modest relief while continuing to apply our toughest sanctions. We will refrain from imposing new sanctions, and we will allow the Iranian government access to a portion of the revenue that they have been denied through sanctions. But the broader architecture of sanctions will remain in place, and we will continue to enforce them vigorously. And if Iran does not fully meet its commitments during this 6-month phase, we will turn off the relief and ratchet up the pressure. Over the next 6 months, we will work to negotiate a comprehensive solution. We approach these negotiations with a basic understanding. Iran, like any nation, should be able to access peaceful nuclear energy. But because of its record of violating its obligations, Iran must accept strict limitations on its nuclear program that make it impossible to develop a nuclear weapon. In these negotiations, nothing will be agreed to unless everything is agreed to. The burden is on Iran to prove to the world that its nuclear program will be exclusively for peaceful purposes. If Iran seizes this opportunity, the Iranian people will benefit from rejoining the international community, and we can begin to chip away at the mistrust between our two nations. This would provide Iran with a dignified path to forge a new beginning with the wider world based on mutual respect. If, on the other hand, Iran refuses, it will face growing pressure and isolation. Over the last few years, Congress has been a key partner in imposing sanctions on the Iranian government, and that bipartisan effort made possible the progress that was achieved today. Going forward, we will continue to work closely with Congress. However, now is not the time to move forward on new sanctions, because doing so would derail this promising first step, alienate us from our allies, and risk unraveling the coalition that enabled our sanctions to be enforced in the first place. That international unity is on display today. The world is united in support of our determination to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. Iran must know that security and prosperity will never come through the pursuit of nuclear weapons. It must be reached through fully verifiable agreements that make Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons impossible. As we go forward, the resolve of the United States will remain firm, as will our commitments to our friends and allies, particularly Israel and our Gulf partners, who have good reason to be skeptical about Iran's intentions. Ultimately, only diplomacy can bring about a durable solution to the challenge posed by Iran's nuclear program. As President and Commander-in-Chief, I will do what is necessary to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. But I have a profound responsibility to try to resolve our differences peacefully, rather than rush towards conflict. Today, we have a real opportunity to achieve a comprehensive, peaceful settlement, and I believe we must test it. The first step that we've taken today marks the most significant and tangible progress that we've made with Iran since I took office. And now we must use the months ahead to pursue a lasting and comprehensive settlement that would resolve an issue that has threatened our security and the security of our allies for decades. It won't be easy, and huge challenges remain ahead. But through strong and principled diplomacy, the United States of America will do our part on behalf of a world of greater peace, security, and cooperation among nations. Thank you very much.
Despite the contrary pressures, and so the Israeli lobbyists, they decided to support the presidential campaign of Donald Trump, and they bankrolled and financed the Zionist parties. And Trump, he exploited the economic vulnerability of Americans, and with angerful populist slogans like "Let's make America great again," Trump capitulated on the anger and frustration of joblessness in America. And when he became the president, now Israel wants to utilize his presidential term of Trump to gain as much as advantage as possible. United States President Donald Trump finally made his move against the Iran nuclear deal. He virtually repudiated the nuclear deal that the Barack Obama administration had painstakingly negotiated with Iran, along with the 5 other governments. Trump announced that he would not certify that Iran was complying with the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, This nuclear deal's name is Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and the deal requires President of USA to certify that Iran was complying. But Trump announced that he would not certify that Iran was complying, and Trump said he was directing his administration to work closely with the US Congress and our allies to address the deal's many serious flaws so that Iranian regime can never threaten the world with nuclear weapons. Now, his action does not mean that the US has formally withdrawn from the nuclear deal, but it is a significant step forward in the professed goal of dismantling the deal and reintroducing sanctions against Iran. The Iranian side had made a lot of concessions to make the deal a reality, including the right for intrusive inspection of its nuclear facilities.
Areas. Number 1. Iran's uranium stockpile. Uranium is the key ingredient necessary in order to operate a nuclear program. The deal requires Iran to give up 97% of its enriched uranium, taking its stockpile from 10,000 kilograms down to just 300 kilograms. That's much less than what's needed to fuel one nuclear weapon, although Iran maintains the capacity to increase the stockpile quickly. Number 2. Uranium enrichment. Uranium comes in different levels of enrichment. A purity of 90% is what's needed to make a weapon. Per the deal, Iran can still produce a modest amount of uranium enriched at low levels, just 3.67%. And if Iran abides by the deal, enrichment is limited in this way for 15 years. Number 3. Reduction of centrifuges. Centrifuges are the machines used to enrich uranium. Iran has to give up 2/3 of its centrifuges. Some 19,000 used for enrichment need to be reduced to about 5,000. Iran can also have 1,000 more for research and development. So what this means is, if Iran abides by the deal for the next decade, it will take Iran at least 12 months to produce enough fuel for a nuclear weapon. And to make sure it doesn't cheat, there will be, number 4, inspections. UN inspectors will be allowed to monitor nuclear and other sites, including military ones, but Iran can challenge requests for access. The inspectors need to provide a basis for concern about undeclared nuclear activity. Any Iranian challenge could delay inspections for up to 24 days. Critics say that could be enough time for Tehran to remove evidence it was carrying out banned activities. So what does Iran get for accepting all of this? Number 5. Sanctions relief. The US, the European Union, and the United Nations will relieve many energy, economic, and financial sanctions against Iran that have been crippling the country's economy. Sanctions will likely lift early next year if Iran complies with the principal requirements in the deal. This is great news for Iran's 82 million people, as it's expected to massively boost the economy, increase trade, and bring new investment into the country. So what's everyone else saying? The Obama administration and many European allies see the agreement as a major victory for diplomacy between Iran and the West.
This moment has been a long time coming.
Every pathway to a nuclear weapon is cut off.
But the deal has angered some critics in Republican-led Congress and some parts of the Middle East, including Israel and Saudi Arabia.
What a stunning, historic mistake.
They say the deal lifts all economic pressure on Iran and worry that this windfall will increase Tehran's funding of organizations like Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Assad regime in Syria. They also say the deal only curbs Iran's nuclear program for 10 to 15 years, allowing Iran to move back to the brink.
Iran even agreed and gave rights to the Americans and the world fraternity for intrusive inspection of its nuclear facilities. When the deal was signed in 2015, it was greeted with enthusiasm by the international community, barring two nations, Israel